Hey, welcome into The Den, a brand new NFL podcast. On today's first segment of this new podcast is week 9 of the National Football League. And we're going to kind of start off this podcast this week. We're going to talk about some of the games from week 9, kind of breaking down, looking at the stats, talking about those, seeing what we learned for some teams. Then also we'll dive into the trade deadline, which was today. Obviously, there was a few headlines, some big trades that were made, as you guys can see looking on the screen here. How about the Colts going out and grabbing Jets cornerback Sauce Gardner? Now, they did give a couple first-round picks there, but I mean, obviously, when you look at the Colts and seeing what we've seen, I think they're legitimate Super Bowl contenders. Now, don't get distracted. Obviously, they did not play well this week. The offense didn't play well. They turned the ball over a lot, and they kind of had a dud week. However, I do think that the Steelers are a good team. I know that their defense had a rough start to the season, but they played really well this week, and that doesn't sway me away from how I think about the Colts. I think Daniel Jones, he did throw 3 picks this week. He only had 2 on the entire season coming in, though. I think Daniel Jones is playing at a high level. Obviously, we've seen Jonathan Taylor. He is Offensive Player of the Year candidate. Heck, he is even MVP level candidate. You can put him up there in that conversation. He is playing some great football. The Colts' offensive line is really, really good. Tyler Warren is really, really good. Then this defense, it's been good enough to win them games this year. And bringing in a big-time defensive back like Sauce Gardner, I don't think it's a bad trade for the Colts. I think this is a win-win for both teams. We've seen the New York Jets. They are, I believe, 1-7 on the year. They're just not really in the shape to compete anymore. Obviously, they have troubles all over the field, offensive line, defense in general, quarterback. They haven't been getting what they've wanted out of Breece Hall so far. So, I mean, realistically, they could trade, improve just about anything on their team. So, getting those 2 first-round picks, that's going to be huge for building the future of their team. But also the Colts, really, you can see that the Colts are really, really making a push to become, Super Bowl contenders, in which I do think that they are. Moving on to the next one, another trade with the Jets, and this time with the Cowboys. The Cowboys trading for Jets defensive tackle Quinnen Williams. Quinnen Williams, he has been very good throughout his career. He is a 3-time All-Pro, and I think the Cowboys, going out and getting him, helping out that defensive line. They already went out and got Kenny Clark, as we know, in the offseason in the Micah Parsons trade. And although I do think that it was a good trade, a good win there for the Packers, I don't necessarily think it was a terrible trade for the Cowboys. And Kenny Clark, honestly, hasn't even played that bad this year. He's been a little banged up at times, but he's played well, good enough for them. And getting a guy like Quinnen Williams to really combo. I mean, you look at that defensive line, that defensive tackle combo, in Dallas now. Kenny Clark and Quinnen Williams, that's a pretty good, beefy group there in the middle on your defensive line. And they gave up, the Cowboys gave up a haul to get him. I will say, 2026 second, 2027 first. It's not quite as much as what the Colts gave up. I don't know if I like the trade in the standpoint the same. I don't see it as equal, though, because, I mean, if you look at a team like the Colts, like I've already mentioned, they have a Super Bowl contending team put together. We've already seen that. They're 7-2 on the year. They've played really well. You look at the Cowboys, on the other hand, they just lost a huge game at home last night, at the time I'm filming this, to the Cardinals. 27-17, and that's a game that the Cowboys had to win there. I think that they're, what are they? Are they 3-6-1, 3-5-1 on the year, I believe, and they still obviously have a chance to compete for the playoffs, but I just don't necessarily know if I agree with them, giving up, their future picks here for Quinnen Williams. I don't think bringing in a guy like Quinnen Williams really flips the ship around like crazy, if you know what I mean. I think it would have been more beneficial to hold on to this draft capital and build your team for the future. But I still don't hate the trade. Quinnen Williams is an amazing player. We've seen what he's done in the NFL already in his career. And, it can go either way. It just kind of depends on the side you want to look at it on. If the Cowboys start turning the ship around, they start winning a lot of games, and they prove me wrong, that's good for them. But I do think that it could be considered good or bad. It just kind of depends the way you want to look at it. Another trade today, the Jaguars, they went out and they got Jakobi Meyers. And I honestly think that this is another pretty good trade for both sides. Jakobi Meyers, as you fantasy managers probably know, hasn't really gotten the production that you would have hoped for out of him. A lot of that is due to the Raiders' offense just being terrible. Geno Smith has not been good. He has thrown I believe after this week, he's now in first place for the most interceptions thrown this year. And it doesn't help him out much. The Raiders' offensive line is terrible. You look at Ashton Jeanty. I honestly don't even think Ashton Jeanty's been a terrible rookie. But, when he's got to run behind that offensive line, can you really blame him for anything? That offensive line is not good. But what does this mean? Well, first of all, for the Raiders, they're going to get some draft capital, 4th and 6th round picks. That's good there for them. Obviously, you're hoping for better there, but you can't really expect 1st and 2nd round draft capital for Jakobi Meyers. That's just not what you're going to get out of him. But what I think this means, first of all, for the Raiders offense is, my goodness, Brock Bowers. He already dropped 43 fantasy points this week. He had over 100 yards, 3 touchdowns on 9 catches, I believe. He's going to get a lot of targets. Realistically, other than, you got Trey Tucker on that offense, you got Ashton Jeanty in the receiving game, and you got Brock Bowers. There's not a whole lot else outside of that. So the Raiders offense, and obviously the Raiders are not anywhere near winning potential. I thought that, at the beginning of the season, that the Raiders could actually be a dark horse decent team. Now, yes, they are playing in a stacked division, which does not help their case at all. But I didn't anticipate Geno Smith being this poor of a player this year, unfortunately for them. But I think it's a good trade for both sides, getting that draft capital for the Raiders, and also then the Jaguars. You look at the Jaguars side of things. The Jaguars, they obviously just lost Travis Hunter, as we know, and they don't have a whole lot of great weapons. We know that Brian Thomas Jr., he's been underwhelming this year. He's had a couple good games. He's had a drop issue. And adding in a guy like Jakobi Meyers, another weapon for Trevor Lawrence to find in the passing game. Like I said, I think that it's a good move for both sides, and I think it's pretty equal. Obviously, if you're a Raiders fan, you probably would have hoped you could have got, a little bit more capital out of that. But, he hasn't played up to his level this year, unfortunately, and there's just, that's probably what you're going to get out of that. Those were kind of the the big headline trades for this week. There's a couple other ones. The Eagles, they got Jalen Phillips. Also a trade that wasn't today, but it was, I believe, a couple days ago. And the Eagles also went out and got Jair Alexander from the Ravens. If you would have told me this a year ago, this probably would have broke headlines. But really, Jair, he just hasn't been the same since he's had some injury problems. He's only played in 2 games this year for the Ravens. Anyway, he just hasn't really made much of an impact. So it's not a huge trade. However, if he does get healthy, he starts playing games. We have seen him in the past. He has the ability to be an all-pro, top-of-the-league level cornerback. So it really just is going to come down to can he get healthy and can he stay on the field and actually make an impact for his team. But now that we've kind of assessed some of the major trades for this week, with the trade deadline being today, let's actually go in and let's talk about Week 9. There was a lot of big games Week 9. There was definitely some upsets, some shocker games. There was also some really bad games and some really good games. So let's talk about, hop in here to Thursday night. The Ravens went down to Miami. And, there's not much to say here. You finally get Lamar Jackson back and healthy. He played well. Tua, honestly, didn't really play horribly. He kind of just, they had a lot of missed opportunities. And really, Lamar Jackson played really, really well. 18 for 23 for 204 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. That's a great stat line. Derrick Henry, he broke over 100. Mark Andrews had a couple of touchdowns there. But, this Dolphins team, I mean, I don't really know, how to address them on offense. Because, as we know, the Ravens' defense, it's really not that good. It hasn't been so far this year. It hasn't been amazing. And the Dolphins could only put up 6. And it's not even like the Dolphins don't even have weapons. I mean, you got Devon Achane. He is a great running back. You can swing out the rock to him. He's a great runner. He's super elusive. He's got good speed. You got Jalen Waddle, who's a star receiver. And it just seems like the Dolphins, they always put together a decent roster. Now, granted, this year they are having injury problems, right? Darren Waller's out with a pectoral injury. Obviously, Tyreek Hill's out for the rest of the year. And their offensive line is not incredible by any means. But, on paper, the Miami Dolphins, they don't have a terrible roster put together, especially offensively. And, it kind of makes you, maybe point towards the coaching aspect of things. But, they have underperformed. I think this was a team, especially playing at home, that their offense should have done better against, and they just didn't do that. And I think that the Dolphins' season is, it's probably over for the most part. I think their tenure with Mike McDaniel is probably coming to a close here after this year. But, I mean, it wasn't a great game by any means. It was a game that, but just about everybody probably picked the Ravens to win this game. And, Lamar Jackson, coming back from injury, he looked good. Now, granted, he was healthy the previous week. He probably could have played last week, but they wanted to ensure that he was going to be fine, and that ended up being the right move. The Ravens are now on a 2-game win streak. They beat the Bears last week, and now, I mean, they're sitting just fine to come back and take over that division. Honestly, you look at that record, 3-5, and you're like, whoa, what do you mean? But the Ravens, when Lamar Jackson's healthy, the Ravens are a very, very good team. And, don't be surprised if they make a run all the way back for that division. All right, next game, getting on to the 1 o'clock games on Sunday. First one we'll start with here, the Panthers and the Packers. Panthers came to Lambeau, and they upset at the time, the number 1 seed in the NFC, the Green Bay Packers. And this was kind of an ugly game all around. We go and look. Bryce Young, he only threw the ball 20 times today, but the reason for that is because you got Rico Dowdle in your backfield. And let me tell you, Rico Dowdle, he's a good player. He is a dang good player. And about the worst thing that could have happened for Chuba Hubbard is getting injured, because Rico Dowdle has fully taken his spot now. And it's for good reason. Look at this stat line right here. Rico Dowdle, he had 25 carries for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, that is incredible. And, this isn't just some regular defense. Keep in mind, the Green Bay Packers at the time of this game, they had the third best run defense in the National Football League. And Rico Dowdle comes into Lambeau and he rushes for 130 yards, 2 touchdowns on 25 carries. Bryce Young, he doesn't need to throw the ball when they're going to do that, and he didn't. He threw the ball 20 times. They ran the ball more with Rico than they threw the ball with Bryce Young, and it was an element for success. The Green Bay Packers offense did not play well in this game either. On the flip side, though, Jordan Love, he had a couple really bad throws, bad decision-making, and the offense in general. They just didn't really get a whole lot done today. It was kind of an ugly defensive game. The Packers had a missed field goal, and then the Packers finally got a drive going there in the fourth quarter. They went down the field. They scored with Josh Jacobs, and then unfortunately for the Packers, the Panthers, they had enough time. They went down the field, got in field goal range, and they kicked a last-second expiring field goal. I think if you're the Packers, you got to figure out how to win some of these ugly games, and the offense has got to get better. We've seen instances this year. You look at the Cowboys game, look at the Steelers game, where Jordan Love and the offense really, really played well. But then you also have some games like this in the Browns game, for example, where the offense just really didn't play that well, and you can't put this game on the defense for the Packers. They holding the Panthers, if you hold any team to 16 points, you consider that a win for your defense. And if your offense can't manage to score more than 16, then there's obviously a problem offensively. This isn't a game that you are going to pinpoint on the defense. It's just not. And I think that the Packers have a legitimate level defense. It's just that offense, maybe a little bit of the coaching I'm worried about. But I do still think, if you're a Packers fan, you don't need to worry. I do still think the Packers are a legitimate team. I think that they have Super Bowl potential, definitely a deep playoff run potential. They have the squad put together for that. We've seen what their defense has done. We've seen what their offense has done, when they're clicking on all cylinders. Losing Tucker Kraft does hurt. Don't get me wrong, but Luke Musgrave, he can fill the position, I think. And I still think that the Packers, they're a good team still. Getting Christian Watson back and healthy. Josh Jacobs hasn't played tremendously well this year, but he has done a good job finding the end zone. But the Packers offense, when they're clicking on all cylinders, we've seen them play. We've seen that Steelers game last week. They are a really good football team when they need to be. But they got to figure out how to win these ugly games against these bad teams. These are games that they just cannot be losing. Moving on here, and this game, Steelers and the Colts. This game was, it was a bit of a surprise to me. I had the Colts winning this game, not by, a landslide by any means, but I did have the Colts winning this game. But boy, I was wrong. The Pittsburgh Steelers, especially defensively, really, really impressed me. The Colts coming in were the best offense in the league. They were first in scoring. Jonathan Taylor was looking like the number one offensive player candidate in the top 5 and MVP candidate. Same goes for Daniel Jones in terms of MVP. He was playing amazing. Their offense was clicking on all cylinders. Tyler Warren, the rookie tight end, good receiving core, offensive line's great. The offense is just stellar over there in Indianapolis. However, they did not play like it on Sunday at all. They came down to Pittsburgh, and they just got off to a poor start in that first half. The very, very initial part of the game, they got off to a great start. Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers started off with the ball. Indianapolis Colts forced them to a 3-and-out. Colts go down the field, they score. Things are looking good. Rodgers gets back on offense again. They get shut down. However, that's kind of where things took a turn. And the Steelers punt the ball. It's not really necessarily a muff. It's just a bad bounce, and it hits the returner. And right there, the Steelers get the ball in the red zone, and then just from that point on, it was an ugly game. The defense just kept getting turnovers after turnovers after turnovers off the Colts, and they kept constantly putting the Steelers' offense in great situations, great positions, and they thrived off that. I don't really necessarily think that the Steelers' offense did anything spectacular in this game. They just, fortunately, by their defense, they were put into a lot of great situations. Looking at the stats, one good thing that they did do was they did get Jaylen Warren involved, finally getting him some touchdowns. I know, I don't think he had a rushing touchdown since week 4, I think they said. And, getting him involved, he had 2 touchdowns today. That's great, a great stepping stone for their offense there. I didn't think Aaron Rodgers necessarily played incredible, but he played well enough to get the job done. He went 25 for 35 for 203 yards and a touchdown. One of the things with Aaron Rodgers this year that's kind of different from the past years is Aaron Rodgers has really thrown a lot of short passes this year. They've checked down a lot. They like to utilize those tight ends and drags and kind of just short route type plays. Rodgers loves to utilize his tight ends. You look at like DK Metcalf, for example. They went out, they got a big body, big physical, throw it up to him type guy in DK Metcalf, and they really just don't utilize him. He only had 2 catches for, I believe, 6 yards in this game. I mean, he just didn't really make much of an impact, and I think the Steelers could be more successful if they did. Aaron Rodgers, he hasn't necessarily been incredible on medium to deeper throws this year. He just hasn't. But he hasn't really been asked to throw them too often either. But I think that the Steelers' offense, believe it or not, it is better than what it represented in this game. But man, that Steelers defense, they played incredible. And if the Steelers defense plays like this for the rest of the year, they're going to be a dang good team. They're going to be scary, and they're not going to be a team that you're wanting to face. But if you're a Colts fan, you shouldn't feel discouraged by this game. One, because, the Pittsburgh Steelers, you do have to remember, you got to take it with a grain of salt, their defense, it is the highest paid defense in the National Football League. Their defense is paid to play like this. And, unfortunately for Colts fans, this was their first game where they actually played to their money's worth. It sucks that it had to be taken out on them. But this is how the Steelers is intended to play. And I've been saying all along since the start of the year that the Steelers are a good team. They are, they're not a team that I would want to play. And as a coach, especially going to Pittsburgh, these guys are good. Their offense is good. Their defense is good. And, they lost a couple games there. They lost a home game to the Packers. That's fine. They lost an away game to the Bengals. That's a game that you probably want to win. But, the Bengals offense is really good, and we'll get down to them in a little bit. But, you look at the Steelers, they also have, a good win over the Patriots, who the Patriots look red hot right now. So, the Steelers are a good team. And if you're a Colts fan, you should not feel discouraged by this loss, in any way. And kind of picking right back where we just left off, let's talk about those Bengals. They did lose this game. This game was crazy, and it was a shootout and a crazy ending. First of all, can we just acknowledge Joe Flacco for a second? 40-year-old quarterback here breaks the NFL record for the most passing yards by a 40-plus-year-old player in NFL history. 470 yards. The Cincinnati Bengals scored 42 points. Joe Flacco with 4 touchdowns in response to that. And Joe Flacco, by the way, he has just been just like a shot of revival for this Cincinnati Bengals offense. I mean, we seen the Bengals before they got Flacco, and you look at that game against the Vikings. I mean, it was terrible. Jake Browning looked horrible, and now Joe Flacco's came in, and he's played well. Joe Flacco, I don't care what his record shows. I think he's 1-2 since he's got there, 1-3, whatever. I don't care what his record is. He is not the problem. The problem is the defense, if you can't tell by the score up above. The problem is the defense. Joe Flacco played a good enough game to win this game. Did he have 2 picks? Yes. But his defense cannot allow 47 points. It just can't be like that. You look at Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, he had a really good day. 280 yards, 3 touchdowns. They allowed the rookie out of Rutgers, Kyle Monangai, 26 carries for 176 yards. That's inexcusable. The rookie tight end, Christian Loveland, he had 6 receptions, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Great day overall for the Bears offense, but that's typically kind of what you expect for offenses when they are coming to play the Bengals, that's for sure. But yeah, when you look at this game here, it starts off with a kick return touchdown, and then from that point, it's just a shootout. But the part I really want to, kind of highlight the ending of this game. So with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, the Bears got a pretty good lead. It looks like the game's over. It looks like the Bears got this game won. Joe Flacco takes his team down the field in 4 plays. They get a 23-yard touchdown pass to Noah Fant, and it's 41-35. 6-point lead still left for the Bears. And then they try an onside kick, and believe it or not, the Bengals got the onside kick. They go down, they score another touchdown, they take the lead. They leave the Bears, I think it was 40 seconds, and their defense can't even stop them for 30 seconds. And the Bears throw a 58-yard touchdown to Colston Loveland. He breaks 3 tackles in the process, goes all the way down the field for a touchdown to win the game, in heartbreaking fashion if you're a Bengals fan. And it truly sucks for the Bengals, because the Bengals are, honestly, they're not a bad team. And, I hate it for Zach Taylor as a coach, because everyone's dissing on Zach Taylor, and I honestly don't think he's a horrible coach, and he's probably going to end up getting fired. And, his defense is horrible. I'll give you that. But he's honestly not a bad coach, and the Bengals aren't a bad team either. Joe Flacco's out there, he's balling, he's playing he's playing super well. And, everybody on that Bengals offense, it seems like Chase Brown, since getting Joe Flacco, he's kind of had a revival. He's playing a lot better. T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, I mean, you look at them, they were having horrible seasons to start off the year. And now Jamar Chase, he's right back to where he was last year. And T. Higgins, he had a great game on Sunday. 7 receptions, 121 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's a great day for T. Higgins and, this Bengals offense in general. And, if you're a Bengals fan, I mean, I don't know. It's basically gotten to the point now where you're probably going to have to win out to give yourself a chance for Joe Burrow to come back and to potentially make a playoff run. And I'm not going to completely throw it out of the water and say if it's impossible, because as good as this Bengals offense is, I'm not going to rule out anything. But I do think that the Bengals defense is going to have to step it up. And then on the flip side, the Bears, I honestly, I don't know how I think about the Bears right now, because, they got a good win here. Their offense played great, but they're going against a bad defense. They played horrible last week against the Ravens. They've had a couple losses early, and then they went on a good win streak. I don't know how I feel about the Bears yet. I think that they're probably safe locks to make the playoffs. I think Ben Johnson's a good enough coach to get them there. I just don't know how I feel about them yet. I haven't seen enough out of them. I've seen some good play. I've seen some bad play. Um, but I do think that, this 47 points, this offensive massacre for the Bears, it's definitely an over-representation of what they really are as a team. But that's just kind of what you get when you're playing against the Bengals, unfortunately, with just how bad their defense really is. All right, now we got another one, another upset. A lot of them this week, and this one pretty unexpected and a pretty good game at that. But J.J. McCarthy returns after quite a long break from football, and he comes into Detroit, and he gets a win there. And this game, like some others already we've discussed, caught me off guard a little bit. The Lions got off to a great start, found Sam Laporta over the middle for 40-yard touchdown. However, their offense kind of just, went stagnant a little bit. The Vikings rose to the challenge. J.J. McCarthy, he had 2 touchdown passes in the first quarter, found Jay Jettis and T.J. Hawk. And then, the Lions matched that with a 2-yard rushing touchdown from David Montgomery. But, the Vikings, they don't let their foot off the gas pedal, really, until that fourth quarter, I would say. J.J. McCarthy gets a rushing touchdown. At this point, they're up 24-14, and then 27-17. By that point, it's a 10-point game. Jared Goff finds Jameson Williams finally. Jameson Williams, he's not been very good this year, and it's not his fault. He just hasn't really gotten the targets, and he just hasn't really gotten much opportunities to be good this year. But they find him towards the end for a touchdown there, but it's just a little too late, and the Vikings, they go over there and they get a good win. And what does this say? Well, first of all, what this says is that the NFC North is a very good division, and right there. Who's the best? I don't know. I thought it was the Packers. Well, the Packers just lost to the Panthers, so then obviously you point to the Lions, right? Well, Lions just got beat on their home field as well. So is it the Vikings? Well, the Vikings got some bad losses. Is it the Bears finally this year? Well, the Bears dropped a game to a Lamar Jackson-less Ravens team last week. So, but then on top of that, they all got winning records. They've had some good wins. I mean, we've seen what the Packers did, like I've mentioned already, coming into Pittsburgh and putting up a good game there. So, it's hard to tell really, who the best team in this division is. I mean, this team, it's host to 2 to 3 potential number 1 teams in the NFC, let alone the division itself. So it's a very, very good division. The Lions didn't play as well as they usually do today. They are definitely a better team than this. But they'll bounce back. But also the Vikings with J.J. McCarthy, they look good, and they look good. They look good in this game. And honestly, J.J. McCarthy, also Aaron Jones, before he got injured, Aaron Jones played really well. 9 carries for 78 yards. That's like 8 or 9 yards per carry right there. He had a good rushing attack day. They got him involved early. He did kind of get banged up a little bit, unfortunately. But yeah, he also made a great impact. And one last message there. I know that the Detroit Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs fantasy managers, probably aren't feeling too happy about this game, and unfortunately, I have Jahmyr Gibbs on my fantasy squad, so I feel your pain there as well. Next up here, Chargers and Titans. This game, not really much of a surprise here. Titans are just not a good football team, and the Chargers came in. They got the job done. One thing you're going to look at here is you're going to look at the score, and it's going to make the game seem like it was a lot closer than it really was, which is just not true. First of all, Justin Herbert threw a pick six right at the very, very beginning of the game. This is actually the clip right here. I won't play it for copyright reasons, but they were down 7-0 right away, and the very next drive, he shakes that off. They go 7 plays, 76 yards. Justin Herbert scores a touchdown. passing touchdown to Scott Matlock. And then, their next touchdown that the Titans get is a 67-yard punt return. So far, the Titans have 14 points, 0 of them being accounted for by their offense. And that's why I lead to say, obviously the final scores can indicate 27-20. That seems like a pretty close game. But in reality, this game, you take away those 2 touchdowns, one of them just being a straight-up mistake by Justin Herbert, the other one being a great special teams play by the Titans. This is a 27-6 game, and it's not really close. We still didn't see anything out of the Titans' offense that makes them look somewhat halfway decent in this game, and, that's to be expected. The Titans just don't have any weapons to work with. Their offensive line is terrible. They have no running back room. The receiving room's terrible. Cam Ward, you look at his stats, he doesn't look great. But in reality, if you actually go and watch some Titans games, I've seen Cam Ward make some ridiculous throws, some ridiculous plays. He's had some bad moments too, but he's a rookie. He's a rookie starting as a true rookie. Starting right out the gate, week 1 as the starting quarterback, never played an NFL snap before. So, there's a lot of pressure and weight on his shoulders, especially for that, and I think he's played well. He's not set up in a situation where he's going to be successful anyway. It's not like a Jaden Daniels situation where he's got a good team around him, a good defense, speaking last year, of course, around him to be successful right out the gate. It's not the same situation for Cam Ward, and I think Cam Ward's done just about as well as he can in the situation that he's in, but this is another rebuild year for the Titans. They're still working on the rebuild. They need to focus this offseason in this draft getting some weapons for Cam Ward, whether that's the offensive line, whether that's a star receiver, whether that's building the defense. I mean, there's just about any position other than quarterback at this point for the Titans that you could draft and sign in free agency to build around. The Titans just don't have a good roster. And the Chargers played well enough in this game. Other than that pick six, Herbert played well. He also had a good game on the ground. Another good game for the rookie tight end Godson. He's kind of emerged as a good player these last few weeks, and he's starting to get a lot more targets. Justin Herbert definitely likes to throw him the ball. However, the Chargers, they didn't really make much of an attack, in the rushing game this week. They kind of focused on, getting it done through the air. But like I said, this game was not as close as the final score will indicate. Moving on, this game, the Falcons and the Patriots, another good one. Patriots, they're on a roll right now, 7-2, a good winning streak there for them. And Falcons, though, another good fantasy game. Drake London, he had over 40 fantasy points. He found the end zone 3 times today. As you can see, Drake London, he had 118 yards on 3 touchdowns, 9 catches. Great game for him. First of all, Drake May, he did have that 1 turnover, but he still played well. Drake May this year, he's playing at an elite level, and he's honestly doing it not in like an incredible, he doesn't have an incredible team around him. I do think that Mike Vrabel is a very, very good head coach, and he was a great hire by the Patriots. And it already showcases the Patriots are 7-2. Drake May is playing like a top 5 MVP candidate. He's not got the greatest of weapons around him, to begin with. The defense isn't bad, but the offense doesn't really have anything spectacular on it. But you look at Drake May here. He had that one turnover, but other than that, you look at his stats, he played well. Travion Henderson, the rookie, he got the start today with Ramondre Stevenson being out. Didn't really get him involved a whole lot, 14 carries for 55 yards. But Michael Penix also played well. And, I think that the Falcons, they rallied well after this Patriots team getting out to a good start. They were up 21-0 at half, 24-0 early in the third quarter. Or 24-14, sorry. And the Falcons, they were down 24-14 coming into that fourth quarter. And, they rallied well. Drake London, with 4 minutes left to go, Michael Penix finds Drake London on an 8-yard touchdown pass. However, Parker Romo ends up missing the extra point, which, you can make a point for, Did that cost them the game? Well, in this instance, technically it did, because the Patriots never scored or did anything, in the rest of the game, in which, I mean, obviously they didn't have to, right? So, it's hard to say that, that missed extra points is the reason they lost, right? Because the Patriots, knowing that they have the lead because of that miss, they're not really making an emphasis on trying to do anything now other than just run out the clock. Whereas if he does make that kick, what's to say that, the game's tied 24 to 24, then the Patriots are going to make an emphasis on trying to get down the field and, getting the lead again. So, they go down, they do that, and then the Falcons lose anyway. You know what I mean? It's tough to say. It's a lot of blame to put on a guy, but I won't blame him for that. It's a missed extra point. It sucks. It was in a big moment, but that doesn't define the Falcons' loss. And there's a lot of good to take away from this game if you're a Falcons fan. The Patriots are a very good team, and it's in Foxborough. Yeah, 7-2 team, and you played well. You rallied well in the fourth quarter, and this is a game that you weren't probably supposed to win in the first place. Definitely weren't picked to win, and they outperformed what they were supposed to. They played better than they were supposed to, and I won't blame them. I won't blame the Falcons for this loss. They played well. The Patriots are a really good team, and I expect to see the Patriots making a run this year in the postseason. They went out signing Stephon Diggs, and he's played well enough for them this year. He hasn't necessarily been, an all-star by any means, but he's done enough to make an impact in that offense. Obviously, they haven't gotten enough out of Travion Henderson like they hoped to, but when you look at the offense on paper, and it doesn't necessarily look like a team that's going to blow you off the charts. But when you watch the game tape and you see how well Drake May has played, it really shows. He's been a good player. 49ers and Giants, this game, it's just not a game that, the Giants were really supposed to win, I guess. Mac Jones played really, really well. Only 5 incompletions, 235 passing yards. But you look at Jackson Dart too, man. Jackson Dart's played well, really well as a rookie. In a not-so-great situation. His 2 best weapons on his team, he's lost. They're both out for the rest of the year. And what does Jackson Dart do? Well, he takes that matter into his own hands. He led the team in rushing today. He had 8 carries for 56 yards and a touchdown. He played well in the air, too, with 2 passing touchdowns. But, it just wasn't enough to stop the 49ers. Mac Jones played incredible. Christian McCaffrey, he had a dud week last week, and he's right back to being where he was. Led the team in both rushing and receiving. I mean, it's crazy. If you got a running back that can lead your team in receiving and rushing, score a touchdown in both departments, he's got over 100 rushing yards. He has the ability to have over 100 receiving yards. I mean, Christian McCaffrey's a stud player. Stud player. And even against a pretty good, solid defense in the 49ers, Jackson Dart played well. Giants played well. Obviously, they don't have Malik Neighbors. They don't have Cam Scatterby. They're both out for the rest of the year. And the Giants still improvised. They still played well. And, I wouldn't count the Giants out as, they're not a bad team. Even with these 2 big losses, they're not a bad team. I certainly do not think that Brian Daboll should be fired. I just don't. I think that he should be given more of a chance. And, the 49ers are a good team. And even despite having the injuries that the 49ers have, I mean, you got a guy like Mac Jones. He's come in. He's filled the role of Brock Purdy. Granted, that is kind of how it works with system quarterbacks. You kind of expect anybody to be able to come in and fill the job. But Mac Jones has played really well. He's got the 49ers with the 6-3 record. And, I still can see the 49ers as being, competitors for a good playoff run. And it was a good team, a good win to go on the road there and come out on top against the Giants. This game here, the Broncos and the Texans, this one was kind of a snooze fest, I guess. The Broncos, 7-2, they come on the road to Houston and get the win. C.J. Stroud, he left this game early on, and Davis Mills took over, didn't play well. And it just comes down to the Houston Texans offense just being really, really bad. I feel bad for them because their defense is actually good. Their defense is quite good. I mean, you've seen it right here with this score, 18-15. They held, a pretty good Broncos offense to basically nothing. Bo Nix did not have a great day throwing it. He went 18 for 37, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, only 173 yards. A lot of that production came in the fourth quarter for the Broncos as well. The Texans defense played well, but man, their offense is just really, really bad. They scored 15 points today, all 15 coming off of 5 field goals. So that's just not the ideal offensive attack that you're hoping for. And, it doesn't help when you lose your starting quarterback. I do think that if the Texans don't lose C.J. Stroud in this game, they probably go out. They probably get it done. Nick Chubb, he's just not the same player as he once was. And they're not really giving him the rush attempts either. But, I think a healthy Texans team in terms of C.J. Stroud, I think they win this game. And I don't think the Texans are as bad as their record indicates. Their defense, we've seen their defense, obviously. It's really good. Their defense has been quite good this year. Their offense just needs to step it up. And they have the potential to. C.J. Stroud, I get it, he hasn't played as well since his rookie year. I don't really care about that. I think that C.J. Stroud is still an elite level quarterback in this league. I still think he has top 15 potential, top 10 potentially even. And I still think he's a very good quarterback in this league. And if he comes back fully healthy, I'm not going to count out the Texans in any regard. However, for the Broncos, it's a good win. Anytime you go on the road and get a win, it's a good win. And the Broncos are a very good team. They're well coached. Bo Nix, he didn't have a great game, but he's going to step it up from that factor. Rookie running back R.J. Harvey, though, he had a good game, and he's played well. He's made a pretty good impact there for the Broncos. But yeah, it's a good team win for the Broncos, and they're a good team. Going on the road to Houston against a very good defense, getting the win there, that's about all you can ask for. And a win's a win. It wasn't the prettiest by any means, but just going there and getting it done, you can't really be mad about that. All right, moving on now into the afternoon games. Jaguars and Raiders here. This game was a solid game here. Kind of slow, moving in, and then you get to the fourth quarter, and it kind of turns into a kind of an electrocuting game there in the fourth quarter, back and forth. And first of all, Brock Bowers, what a game! What a game for Brock Bowers, and the production for Brock Bowers is just going to increase. 12 receptions, 127 yards, 3 touchdowns. Incredible day for a tight end. He had over 40 fantasy points. Also, Cam Little breaking the NFL record for the longest field goal. I mean, what is happening? What is happening in this game? But yeah, the Raiders, they could have had this game, tied. They could have ended it with a tie if they chose to. However, they elected to try to go for 2, and they failed. They go for 2, they win the game. They're playing for win or lose essentially, and for a 2-6 team, I don't blame them. You don't really got much to lose. It would have been a good win for them. The Jaguars aren't a horrible team. They're not a great team either, I think, but Trevor Lawrence has played well enough this year. He didn't really play that good against a not so good Raiders team, which it kind of scares me a little bit. Ashton Genzy, again, not an explosive day by any means, but he did get a touchdown through the air. Geno Smith probably played his best game of the year. 10 incompletions. He had 4 touchdown passes, just a little south of 300 yards. Had an interception in there, but that's typical for Geno Smith. But if you're the Raiders, honestly, I mean, you don't really have much expectations left at this point, right? But you can't really be mad about this loss, honestly. Well, I mean, you can, but I wouldn't be mad about this loss. If I'm being completely honest, from the standpoint of a Raiders fan, if I was a Raiders fan, I wouldn't find myself being too upset with this loss. You played well. The offense finally played well. Geno Smith had a good game. You went to overtime against a 5-3 team. You know what I mean? You played about as well as you can. This is not a game that you were really supposed to win. It's not a game you were picked to win. And going there, or I'm going home, saying home, I guess, but playing there, getting to overtime with these guys, it was a good offensive day for the Raiders. And honestly, it was just a good game in general. The Jaguars, they didn't play incredible. Trevor Lawrence didn't really play that well. Like I previously said, they got ETN involved a little bit more this week, but also with the Jaguars adding in Jacoby Myers, and which we talked about earlier, that should help them out in the future as well. Alrighty. Another game here, Saints and Rams. Yeah, we won't spend too much time on this one. This one's just a blowout. The Saints aren't very good. They decided to start Tyler Show. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce his last name. He didn't play He didn't play terribly. Didn't play very good either. I don't necessarily, in my opinion, agree with the decision to bench Spencer Rattler, but that's just the choice they made. Looking at the flip side, though, I mean, I apologize, Saints fans, if there's any of you out there. There's just not a lot to say about the Saints. They traded their bright spot. They're probably their most consistent receiver this year, Rashid Shaheed. He's gone. He's now a Seahawk. That's one trade that we did not talk about, but that did happen. But the Saints, they just don't have a lot to look forward to. And looking at the Rams, like I said, I won't spend a whole lot of time here, but Matthew Stafford played incredible. 281 yards, 4 touchdowns, only 8 incompletions. They got Kyren Williams involved. He had 25 carries. That's good production for him. Puka Nacua, he did have an injury in the game, but before that, he played well. Devontae Adams also, he had 2 touchdowns through the air. As you can see, Tyler Higbee, tight end, had 1 as well. So it was a good day for the Rams. Not very good team in the Saints. Won't spend too much time with that one. Next one, America's Game of the Week, the Chiefs and the Bills. Kansas City did not play well. Patrick Mahomes did not play well. On the flip side, Josh Allen did play very well. Only 3 incomplete passes the entire game, just south of 300 yards, had a touchdown. They got James Cook involved, 27 carries, over 100 yards. Dalton Kincaid, the tight end, 6 receptions, 101 yards, 1 touchdown. He played well. Yeah, the Bills' offense in general just played well. As overall as a group, as a team, they played well, and the Chiefs did not. Patrick Mahomes had an interception, below 50% completion percentage. I think I seen a thing. It was like his lowest or first time he was below 50% in a game in however long. So the Chiefs just didn't play very well. The Bills are a very, very good and legit team. The Kansas City Chiefs are knocked out of the playoffs once again. The AFC is just loaded, and that division for the Chiefs is also loaded. The Broncos, obviously the leaders right now, very, very good. But the Chargers are right there behind them. And, it's not good being third in your division, but, the Chargers and the Broncos, those are 2 very good teams. And, at this point, it's going to be tough. The Chiefs are going to have to start winning some games consistently if they want to make a push for the playoffs, because the AFC is a very good conference this year. All right, and then we move on to the final 2 games of the week, Sunday Night Football and Monday night. We won't spend a whole lot of time here on the Seahawks and the Commanders. What you need to know is that the game was a blowout. Sam Darnold in the first half didn't have a single incompletion. He ended the game with only 3 incompletions. He did throw an interception there in the second half, but he had over 300 yards, 4 passing touchdowns. Jackson Smith played well. Obviously for Commanders, a bad season for them just got worse, as Jaden Daniels is more than likely out for the rest of the season. Messed up his elbow pretty badly. It was a pretty gruesome looking injury, and there just wasn't a whole lot of bright spots for the Commanders to begin with. Anyway, they started off the game horribly. The Seahawks scored 24 points in the second quarter, and they had 31 at half. I mean, at that point, 31-7 at halftime, the game was already over at that point anyway. Why the Commanders were choosing to play Jaden Daniels after being down that badly in the third and fourth quarter anyway, just a big mistake there by the coaching staff, a big no-no, and now they're going to be paying the price of losing, not only losing their starting quarterback for the rest of the year, but how do you think that feels for Jayden Daniels as well? Jayden Daniels suffering a season-ending injury in a moment of a game that it doesn't even matter at that point anymore. They're not going to win. They're getting blown out. And, now, unfortunately, his season is done for, and hopefully we'll see him back and better next year, hopefully playing at an elite level that he can be, because, we seen him last year as a rookie. He played very well. All right, then the final game of the week, Cardinals and the Cowboys. Kind of caught me off guard here. I thought that this was a game that the Cowboys should be able to take care of pretty easily, but Jacoby Brissett, he played well. He stepped in for Kyler Murray, and actually Jacoby Brissett has now been named the starting quarterback, at least for next week. He is going to play over Kyler Murray, and I think it's rightfully deserved. Kyler Murray hasn't played incredible this year. The Cardinals were on a 5-game losing streak before they picked up a win here on the road at Dallas. They held the Dallas Cowboys offense to only 17 points, which was the second best offense in the NFL. Dak Prescott was playing incredible. Javonte Williams was playing good. And, the Cardinals controlled that quite well. Cowboys had some costly turnovers, some fumbles, an interception. That interception was at the end, but they had a couple costly fumbles, 2 of them being in Cardinal territory that, altered the game. Those are 2 spots where the Cowboys could have potentially scored, and that makes it a completely different game. But shout out to the Cardinals defense, stepping up big in those spots and forcing the turnovers to ensure their team win. And like I said, Jacoby Brissett played really well. And Marvin Harrison Jr., career game for him. He had 7 receptions, 96 yards, and a touchdown. He's been underwhelming since he's got to the league, but tonight he looked good, and Jacoby Brissett actually got him the ball, and he can be a dang good player when he's getting the ball. So good win there for the Cardinals. Definitely not a game that I expected the Cardinals to come out with. I definitely figured that the Cowboys would get this game taken care of. As you can see, the Cowboys were favorites. But a good win there from the Cardinals. Jacoby Brissett played well, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for Jacoby Brissett as a starter there in Arizona, and kind of seeing what he can do in the future. And that's all of the games for this week. The recap, talking about also some of the big news and headline trades. I'll try to come out with another episode later this week. We will address all of the upcoming games for Week 10, and I will give predictions just for who I think is going to win. We may also come out with another segment, potentially a mock draft, maybe this week, maybe this weekend. I kind of like the idea of weekend, potentially mock drafts. Just trying to pump out a couple episodes each week. I know it's kind of hard starting a podcast in the middle of an NFL season. You kind of just jumping in. I was hesitant on starting this, but I feel good talking about this, and yeah, we'll definitely come out with a segment later on this week. Breaking down my predictions for the upcoming week, Week 10, and then also if there's any new NFL news, headlines and stuff, injuries, whatnot, we'll talk about that as well. But for now, that's all on Into the Den NFL podcast. Thank you all for listening.